Hello and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. How is everybody doing? I can see a few people already connected. Hello, Rocky Pollack. Hello, Mary Nason. And what a great pleasure to be here once again, ready to study together a little bit more about Pesach. Pesach is coming, in case you didn't receive the memo. Actually, this is a memo that we all received right after Purim. Hello, John. Welcome. How is your friend doing? I hope your Rabbi is doing better. He's in our prayers. And yeah, we have a series on Torah for now until Pesach and even a little bit after Pesach, but it's all connected. Okay, today we are going to study what I like to call the what, why, and how. Just a little introduction about the festival. Next week, we have a special class that I put together for your pleasure that is called Manishtana Rock, and it's all about new melodies or new ways of singing the old melodies for Pesach. So that's an interesting one, because if there is something that you like, the class will stay there on YouTube and Facebook, and then you will have the opportunity to replay it and maybe to learn a few new tunes. Oh, John, I'm reading your message. Great, thank you. We like good news. And then after Manishtana Rock, the week after, and that's just the one session before the Seder, I'm going to share with you some insights that you may want to use for your Seder if you're not joining our Seder. If you are joining our Seder, you will have plenty of insights and inspirational messages, and you know what we do at the Shari Zedek. If you liked last year's Seder, you're going to love this one, because we like to step up our game every time we have a chance, and we are doing that. We are doing exactly that for this year. We are going to have the first Seder that I'm going to lead the first Seder from the sanctuary. I'm going to have special setting there with the fancy cameras and the sound. It's going to be great. And then the second night is going to be a community Seder. Many synagogues and institutions working together, and I'm going to host that one too. More information to come very soon. It's going to be great. So we cover both nights. So even if you have where to spend the Seder, you may want us to lead your Seder. So you just enjoy it with family, no pressure. Let your rabbi guide the way. Going through the Haggadah, we're going to show the words of the Haggadah on the screen, or you're going to have the opportunity also to pick up our Haggadah, the Shari Zedek, as every year if you wish to do so. Everything is going to be great. But today, as I mentioned, first part of this 4-part series that include preparation for Pesach and what happened right after Pesach, which is basically the counting of the Omer and preparation for Shavuot. But if this is the first time that you catch one of our streams, or this is not the first time but you haven't done so, please remember to subscribe, right? Hit the subscribe button, click the bell, so you will be notified every time we go live, every time we upload something to our channels. And if you like the class, give us a thumbs up, YouTube and Facebook. We always like to see those thumbs up there, but they also help us grow our channel. So please give us the thumbs up. And of course, leave comments and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's start with our preparation for Passover. As you can see here, I already have my Pesach plate ready to go with all the goodies. And let's get right into it. So, Pesach. Oh, Shelly Chochinov, welcome to the class. Pesach stuff is already in Bernstein. Oi. Okay. Good. There Pesach everywhere. Costco has Pesach and the supermarket has Pesach. I hope you have Pesach ready at home. Lots of preparation, as we're going to see today. It's one of the most difficult festivals to prepare at home. That's why usually for holidays we wish each other Chag Sameach, right? Happy holidays. But for Pesach we said Chag Pesach Kasher V'Sameach. We not only wish each other a happy and joyous festival, but also a kosher one, because of all the intricacies and details that you have to take into consideration in order to prepare yourself and your home for Pesach. You have to kosher everything. And I have a little bit about that in today's class, how to actually kosher. Hello, Andrea. We all have lots to learn about Pesach. I learn new details every year. And let me tell you what I learned this year. It's not that I learned more about it. It's because this year's Pesach starts right after Shabbat ends. And whenever that happens, it's complicated. Remember that, for example, let's say that Pesach is tonight. Firstborn should be fasting today. It's called the fast of the firstborn, right? You do it the day of the eve of Passover. So the problem is, this year, the day before Passover is Shabbat, is Saturday. And you are not allowed to fast on Shabbat or the day before Shabbat, the Friday, because you have to be preparing yourself for Shabbat. So what do we do? What the Rabbi said that we should do? If you're a firstborn, you have to fast on Thursday. Everything is so complicated, right? Same thing with the burning of the chametz. You know how we do it this year? You search the chametz on Thursday night. You do a burning of the chametz on Friday morning, but you don't say, not the blessing, the declaration. Kol Chamira is in the Haggadah. There is something that you have to say in the morning when you burn the chametz. You don't say it. Just burn the chametz without saying that. But you have to leave a little bit of chametz in the shape of a challah for your Shabbat dinner. Then Saturday morning, all those little leftovers that you should keep in a corner at home. Everything else in your home, your Shabbat dinner itself should be kosher for Passover. Okay? Have that into consideration. So if you think that you're having 2 seders, no, you're having 3. Because the Shabbat dinner is already kosher for the Pesach. The only thing that is not kosher for Passover is the challah, that you have to move your family to a corner where the challah will be there, probably in a piece of plastic or something. You eat the challah after the blessing, everybody eats on top of that, then you keep those leftovers until the morning. In the morning, what do? Is, if you can, you put all those leftovers in the toilet and you flush it. If you cannot do that, you have to make it inedible. How you do that? You can take a dish soap detergent and you put it on top, and then when you put this detergent on top of the food, it's not food anymore. So then you can put it in the garbage or something like that. So that's the solution for this year. And then when you do that, then you say the declaration Kol Chamira on Saturday morning, the one that you didn't say when you burn the chametz on Friday morning. So a lot of details. For me, I'm selling the chametz of my congregants this year. Hopefully you will visit our website. It's going to be there very soon, the form that you can complete so I can sell your chametz on your behalf. We are going to study more about that in a minute. So this year, I have to specify there that the selling starts the day before Pesach, because then otherwise becomes a transaction during Shabbat. So we started the day earlier, and it's all specified the contract. Okay, so yeah, it has to be a non-Jew buying all the chametz, and I already made arrangements with Reverend Peter Fast from Bridges for Peace, a wonderful evangelical organizations that they do great things in Israel, and they are great friends of Sherry Zedek. So he's going to buy all our chametz, and then I'm going to buy it back from him. So the way it works is, if you are selling the chametz through us, when you come to the building, or you email or fax your form, the idea is to make a donation. We keep all that money, and then we use that money to repurchase the chametz from Peter Faso, and it becomes like a little donation to Bridges for Peace at the end of the day. But the idea is that whoever buys it has to make a profit. Okay, so he basically buys from me all the chametz for $20, but then when I want to buy it back from him at the end of the Pesach, I have to give him more than that. Where do we get that money from? It's all thanks to you guys, that you make a donation every time that you bring the form so I can sell your chametz. Okay? So, Shelly, you said feed the birds the leftovers of the challah. Well, the idea is to get rid of that at that point of Pesach. Yeah. So, Pesach, celebrated on the 15th of Nisan, and lasts for either 7 days in Israel or 8 days in the diaspora. I hope we all know that in Israel you always have one extra day of holidays. The only exception is Yom Kippur. Can you imagine? Can you imagine fasting for 2 days? No, nonsense, right? So that's one exception. Yom Kippur, 1 day in Israel and outside Israel. And the other exception is Rosh Hashanah. That is 2 days in Israel as well as the diaspora. Everything else, every other festival, biblical festival, we Jews in the diaspora celebrate for an extra day. So in Israel, they have only one Seder. In the diaspora, we have 2 Seders, first night and second night of Pesach. Okay? So it's the 15th of Nisan. This year will be Saturday, March 27th in the evening. That's when we start the first Seder. And as I gave you the hint, this is a biblical festival. And that's something very important. Every time you have a festival to observe, first question you have to ask yourself, is it biblical or rabbinical? Who came up with the idea to do this? Last festival we observed was Purim. It's rabbinical. Well, what do you mean rabbinical? The book of Esther is in the Bible. No. Well, yes, but the rabbis decided to make a celebration around the book of Esther. It was not commanded by God. Understood? That's Purim. The other one that is like that is Hanukkah. Was decided by the rabbis. But Pesach is biblical. We observe Pesach because God said so. Of course, all the details came from the rabbis because we don't have a temple anymore. So the rabbis created some kind of alternative to the way it's described in the Bible. But the origin is biblical. Okay? Remember that now. So, where is that coming from? Well, the Torah. Exodus, book of Exodus. So, book of Exodus, I would start reading on chapter 12, verse 1 to 14. It says, Adonai, which by the way, remember, one of the names of God used in the Bible, Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt. He said, you are to begin your calendar with this month. First mitzvah for the people of Israel. That's why I wanted to start it here. The mitzvah of having our own calendar. That is considered the very first commandment for the people of Israel as a whole. Okay? So you are to begin your calendar with this month. It will be the first month of the year for you. Of course, this is the biblical calendar. In these days, we follow the rabbinic calendar, which starts with Rosh Hashanah. But the biblical calendar starts with the month of Pesach, with Nisan. Speak to all the assembly of Israel and say on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one per household. Except that if the household is too small for a whole lamb, then he and his next door neighbor should share one, dividing it in proportions to the number of people eating it. Your animal must be without defect. A male in its first year, and you may choose it from either the sheep or the goats. Which is basically the first reference you have to something like the Seder. You have to get together, go to the table, eat a lamb. Similar to what we do today, except that we don't eat the lamb anymore because we don't have the temple. The lamb used to be eaten year after this, and it was part of the sacrifice, and we don't have the temple, so the rabbis decided no more lamb, at least for the Ashkenazi. The Sephardic, they still eat lamb in remembrance of the temple. The rabbi said to avoid any kind of disrespect to the temple, we don't eat lamb on Passover anymore. That's why we eat chicken or other things, but not necessarily lamb or goat or sheep. So you are to keep it until the 14th day of the month. And then the entire assembly of the community of Israel will slaughter it at dusk. They are to take some of the blood and smear it on the two sides of the top of the door frame at the entrance of the house in which they eat it. You take the blood from this animal and you paint your door frame with it. I mean, remember, we are talking about Egypt, right? This is right before the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. That night they are to eat the meat, the lamb, roasted in the fire. They are to eat it with matzah, and maror, so with the unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Don't eat it raw or boiled, but roasted in the fire. Very important. Very important. You are not allowed to eat it in any other way except roasted. With its head, the lower parts of its legs, and its inner organs. Let nothing of it remain until morning. If any of it does remain, burn it completely. So you have to eat it all. Now you can understand why, if the house was too small, they had to share it to be sure that they eat as much as possible from that animal. Now, I am convinced that this is also the source of why we have the tradition to invite people over for the Seder. I don't know if you noticed that we're supposed to have a family dinner for every single holiday. But for Pesach, it's a big deal to either invite somebody or get invited to celebrate with somewhere else. Why such a urgency to do that we don't have in any other holiday? Not even Rosh Hashanah. This kind of craziness to invite people and to make plans in advance. Where am I going to spend Pesach? And so forth. It's coming from here. It's coming from here. The Torah says, right? You have to eat the lamb. And if it's too small for you, share it with somebody else. And if you are that somebody else, that you don't have the lamb, go and find somebody else so you can eat with them. It's exactly what we do with the Seder. And if you haven't started that process to figure it out, what is going to happen during your Seder, you're kind of running out of time. Because what happens, if you're part of a bubble, somebody else, maybe you want to be together eating for Passover. If you don't have such bubble, do it at home. But you have to make those decisions. Because you have to either cook or order food. So it's good to start way in advance with all this preparation. If you don't have anywhere to go, as I mentioned before, don't worry, because we are going to have an online Seder for the 2 nights of Pesach. So either you are by yourself with your inner family at home, and we can lead your Seder. And even if you are spending with other family members, you can also let us lead your service, your Seder. But you have to make a plan. And this is a good time to do that. I mean, the best time, according to the rabbis, is right after Purim. We are already past Purim. So, time to do that. Any questions so far? Shelly says, very cool, but that's not a question. Never mind. So let me continue now with the second half of the text from Exodus. We already introduced a few concepts, right? The dinner, the meat, matzah, and maror. John, you said, but now we don't destroy the leftovers? What was decided by the rabbi? What leftovers? The animal? Well, because we don't need the animal anymore. After the temple of Jerusalem was destroyed, we stopped out of a mourning practice eating the meat. Yeah. So if you have leftover on the Pesach Seder, you just send it home with your guests. Yeah, no. We don't destroy the leftovers. We keep it. In fact, I will tell you my experience. It's all I eat during the week of Pesach. It's all the leftovers from the Seder. My wife is very good at that. She put it in different containers, so I have food for the entire week. I don't even have to worry about what I'm going to eat tomorrow. I had so many meatballs and chicken and matzah and things left over, kugel, left over from the Seder. And I have it all organized in the fridge for every day of the week until the end of Pesach. So, yeah, that's one way you can do it. You just order enough food right before Pesach, and then you eat some of the Seder, and the rest you freeze it. So you have food for that entire week that we have all these dietary restrictions. Okay, so we have this introduction of what we eat, but now the Torah will continue and will let us know how we should eat it. It says, here is how you are to eat it. With your belt fastened, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. In other words, you have to be ready to go on command. The let's go could come at any point. And this is almost like in the morning, right? When I had to take my son to school, and I start getting him warnings. You know, we're living in 20 minutes, living in 15 minutes, we're living in 10 minutes, we're living in 5 minutes, we're living now. What do you mean now? I'm still in my pajamas. Dude, I've been telling you forever that you have to be ready because we are leaving. So to avoid that, what God is saying here is they should be ready right now. Don't leave it to the last minute because you don't know when it will be time to leave. So even that meal will have to be, you have to eat it ready to go. Okay. And you are to eat it hurriedly. Again, don't take too much time because you don't know when you will have to leave and you may have to go hungry. And it says, it is Adonai's Pesach. Let me stop right there. Or maybe not. Let me read one more line. For that night I will pass through the land of Egypt and kill all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and animals. And I will execute judgment against all the gods of Egypt. I am Adonai. The blood, remember that we had to paint the frames with blood. So the blood will serve you as a sign, marking the houses where you are. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. That's why we call it Passover. Now I get it. It says here, I will pass over you. When I strike the land of Egypt, the death blow will not strike you. This will be a day for you to remember and celebrate as a festival to Adonai. From generation to generation, you are to celebrate it by a perpetual regulation. So in other words, God is saying at the very end that this is going to continue. It's not a one-time shot that you are going to have this dinner. You're going to eat matzah and maror, etc. You have to do it every single year because there were some commandments that they were just for a specific moment. There are some commandments they're just for Israel, for example, right? Like the sabbatical year or the jubilee and things that they're specifically for Israel. But what it says here, because of the language, it means that we will have to find a way to celebrate this festival whatever and whenever we are. That's clear? So let me go back to that when it says Adonai Pesach. Because yes, we call this festival Passover. Why? Because the angel of death passed over the houses of the Israelites at time of the 10th plague. Right? So far so good. That's why we call it Passover. But if you see what it says, it's Adonai Pesach. Pesach is the Hebrew word. It's not talking about the passing over. Pesach is the sacrifice that they ate that night. So we are talking about two different things here. If you call it in Hebrew, in English, Passover, you are making reference of God or the angel of death passing over the houses of the Israelites. But if you call it Pesach, you are talking about the lamb. In English, it's called the Paschal lamb. So two different concepts. Two different concepts which are not the same. They are not the same. Even though they come from the same root, they are not the same. And that's something that happens in English. In Spanish, the holiday is called Pascua, which is Pesach. It's the same thing. So there is no problem there. But in English, the fact that we call it Passover could be a little confusing, because the main thing is not about the passing over, but it's we are celebrating that Paschal lamb. Okay, remember that now too. Maybe you can mention that in your own Seder. And everybody say, wow, how do you know that? Huh, Rabbi must told me. Let's continue. More commandments that we learn from the Torah. It said matzah is to be eaten throughout the 7 days. Neither chametz nor leavening agents are to be seen with you throughout your territory. And during those 7 days, no leaven is to be found in your houses. Whoever eats food with chametz in it is to be cut off from the community of Israel. It doesn't matter whether he is a foreigner or a citizen of the land. Now, this is very interesting, because what it's talking about here is that there is a second festival. You see, this is also something that I learned late in life. Pesach as a festival is only one night, 2 in the diaspora. The rest of the week is not Pesach anymore. It's called Chag HaMatzot, the festival of the matzah. In these days, we kind of combine both, and we call the entire week the week of Pesach. But that's not entirely correct. Only the first 2 nights in the diaspora should be called Pesach, and the rest of the week should be called Chag HaMatzot. Nothing to do with the Paschal Lamb. The only thing that we have the rest of the week is the restriction of chametz, that we are not allowed to have leavened things. That's it. Can you see that? It's very important. So, yeah, we call Pesach or Chag HaMatzot to the entire week. We use one or the other, doesn't really matter, but it should be considered 2 separate festivals. Pesach is at the beginning, Chag HaMatzot is the rest of the week. Okay, and we have these 2 specific commandments. Number 1, chametz nor leavening agents are to be seen with you throughout your territory. And then the other one, no leaven is to be found in your houses. So this is the prohibition. You see, nothing to do with eating. Here it says that it's also that you are not allowed to own or to have it visibly with you at home, all these chametz or these leavened products. And that's why we sell it, or we donate it, or we eat it before Pesach, so we can fulfill this commandment. And the rabbis establish a process through which we fulfill these 2 verses of the Bible. It's not so easy. It's not so easy. We have at least 4 different ways that we have to fulfill, 4 different commandments to fulfill these 2 commandments. Let me explain. The rabbi says that there are 3 basic ways of removing chametz from one's possession to fulfill the commandments that we just read from the book of Exodus. Number 1 is bitul chametz, which is the nullification of ownership of chametz. In other words, let's say that you have chametz, you can actually say, it's not mine anymore, so I can give it away. Or if you want it, you can take it. It's not mine. Okay, so by doing that, you can do that with any object you actually own. You can say, this object is not mine anymore. And if you want it, you take it. So that's process number 1. Number 2 will be mechidat chametz, which is the sale of the chametz. You can actually sell it. You don't want to give it away? Sell it to a non-Jew, because they don't have a restriction of eating or owning chametz during Passover. How do you sell your chametz? We're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay, but you have that opportunity to sell it. Number 3 is bedikat chametz, which is basically involved in searching and burning of the chametz. It's not just not mine. It's not that you sell it. You just, you know what? You burn it. and then the chametz is not there anymore. And I would say the fourth one is you eat it before Pesach. That's what they say. At least you have 4 ways. The fourth is you eat it before Pesach. And this is a process also that people start doing right after Purim. Right after Purim, you start eating all the chametz you have at home, and you stop buying new chametz, so you won't have all this chametz that you won't know what to do right after Pesach. So you are more mindful, more conscious of how much chametz you buy before Pesach. Okay? So how do we actually do these 3 processes, the 3 steps that we have there? Because you already know by now that with the Rabbi it's not that easy as to give you a name of something. There are details with every category. So let's go through some of the details of these 3 categories. Let's start first with Mehirat Chametz, which is the sale of the Chametz, okay? Because this is usually the one that is done first out of the 3. So, a Jew who had his own Chametz in his possession on Pesach transgresses each and every moment of Pesach on the prohibition of it shall not be seen and it shall not be found. Remember, Book of Exodus. And it is prohibited to benefit from such chametz forever. Very important. If you don't sell the chametz, you will say, well, big deal. I transgress 1 commandment. No. Because basically, that chametz that you didn't sell before Pesach, if you want to eat it after Pesach, you are transgressing another commandment. Because that chametz is forbidden for you forever. This is a big controversy with Jews owning breweries or distilleries. Why is that? Well, because they own the products that they make. And in order to make beer or whiskey, you need to use grains, which basically the product of the grain is chametz. So beer and whiskey are forbidden for Passover. So if you're a Jew and you own this, and you don't sell it before Pesach, then that becomes forbidden forever. So then as a Jew, if you are an observant Jew, then you're not allowed to buy that product because you already know that it's coming from chametz that it was not sold before Pesach. So now you cannot drink it. Little detail, right? You said, oh, I never thought about that. Well, that's why you come to class. So you think about those things. So that chametz is forbidden. We used to have here, I'm pretty sure Shelley Jochinov will type it there, the Bronfman family, right? Here in Winnipeg. I will give it a second for her to type it, or somebody else. That's a problem. Jewish family producing rye whiskey. So if they don't sell it, or I also know Jewish people who own breweries, and it's a problem. They should sell the... Yeah, they were from Montreal. They were makers of Crown Royal. But I heard the controversy that they didn't sell the chametz. So it is a problem that there is a lot of Jewish heritage in Winnipeg from whiskey. Okay, just saying this. That's why it's important to sell the chametz. Okay. Well, but sometimes it doesn't matter. If it's not full ownership, right? It's not just one family owning, but it's part of they have shares and things is different. The same thing that if any other whiskey and beer and bourbon, etc., that is manufactured by non-Jews, there's not a problem. That chametz, it's allowed to you after Pesach. They don't have to sell it. But it's just if it's fully owned by a Jew. That is the problem. Okay? So, let's continue here. Reading the Shulchan Aruch. Therefore, one who owns large amounts of chametz that he's unable to destroy, or eat, or donate, must sell it to an idolater before Pesach. And I didn't want to change the word idolater. That means non-Jew, because that's the way it's written in the original book. Just so you know the way you used to talk back in the day. This chametz might be eaten by a Jew after Pesach. So in other words, you sell it, and then after Pesach, you go back to the same non-Jew and say, you know what, I want to buy it back from you. But then the guy says, okay, I will sell it back to you, but I want to make a profit. Sure, pay you the extra. Now that comes back to you, and now you can eat it again after Pesach. So after Pesach, the Jew should request from the non-Jew that he should sell him back the chametz from such and such an amount of money. So in these days, to make this kosher, you do it through a rabbi. So the form that you signed is not the selling form. It's a power of attorney allowing me to sell your chametz and to rent or to lease the room where the chametz is stored. So basically what you have to do from now until Pesach is you go all over your home, you collect all the chametz you have, and you put it in one room. If you can lock that room, even better. And then you sign that form, give it to me, and I sell your chametz and I lease that room. So even though the chametz is in your place, you don't own it. And you don't see it. So then you're not in violation of the biblical law. Okay? So here you go. That's the way we do it. And again, we do this all publicly. So if you ever want to know how I sell the chametz, we always stream it. So you can witness online the way I do it. All the information is going to be posted on our website and on our Facebook page. Yeah. Let's continue. Searching and burning of the chametz. First, the searching. So this is done preferably beginning with dusk on the evening of the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, which is the evening before the first Seder. Those years, like this year, in which the first Seder falls on Saturday night, the Bedikah, the searching, might be conducted Thursday night. One should make the search by candlelight or flashlight and search his home for every piece of chametz he can find. Before one begins the search, he recites the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu mitzvotav etzivanu, right? And then you say, concerning the destruction of the chametz. So you do it with a blessing. This is a serious matter. You're fulfilling a mitzvah by doing this. Upon completion of the search, the next step is the bitul, nullification. Remember I told you, you have to say, this is all the chametz that I found, not mine. And there is a formula that is in the Haggadah, usually at the beginning of the Haggadah, the book we use for the Seder, that is called Kol Chamira, which is recited, basically it's an Aramaic formula, it's a Kol Chamira. And the translation says, all chametz or leavening which is in my possession, which I have not seen or have not removed, or whose existence I didn't know about, I'm making null and void as the dust of the earth. Okay, so you said, God, I did my best. I may have missed a piece of two of chametz. Please forgive me. And even those things, you know what? They are like dust. That's why it's things that I may, and they are not my possession. So you have to say that. Okay, so Shelley, you said, all the chametz in Israel is sold to an Arab gentleman. Yep, yeah, I read the article. I think you sent me the article last year to read about him. Okay, so we searched the chametz. We found out this little piece of chametz. Some people, what they do is that you purposely put some chametz in a few places in your home. Otherwise, you will say a blessing for nothing. It's called bracha lebatala. So to avoid that, you pre-place a little bit of chametz here and there. So after you say a blessing, you do the search, you can find it. So next is the burning of the chametz. So the following morning, the chametz found the previous night plus the leftover from the breakfast might be burned. The nullification is again pronounced with the addition. So you repeat the kol chamira, all the chametz that I don't know about. You just add that to the previous formula. Or don't know about, you add it. So basically this year, as I mentioned before, because Pesach starts after Shabbat, you don't say the second Kol Hamira on Friday morning. You just burn it. You will recite it on Saturday morning after you eat your breakfast, and you dispose all the leftover chametz that you have. That's when you say it this year. Okay, Another thing that I want to tell you is this deal of the kitniot. So in the period of the Gaonim, so basically what happened is, depends of what period the rabbis are, they have different labels. So for example, the ones who wrote the Mishnah, they're called the Tanaim, right? There's a label that you put, depends on which era the rabbis live and so forth. So rabbis who lived between the year 600 to 1000, they're called the Gaonim. Okay? So in the period of the Gaonim, an additional prohibition was added forbidding the consumption of kitniot, bean products, corn, rice, mustard, peas, and other grains, which when ground into flour may in some way resemble one of the 5 species that they are forbidden of Pesach, 5 species of grain, which are wheat and stuff. And also kitniot were mixed together with one of the 5 species of grain. And the 5 species of grain are einkorn wheat, emmer wheat, durum wheat, barley, and 2 row barley. So those 5 things are forbidden whatsoever, even if they haven't leavened yet. The rabbis decided that they are forbidden unless that they are certified for Passover. That is somebody certifying that it was not in contact with moist or other thing that may have started the process of leavening. So those 5 species are forbidden, and the Gaonim added on top of that the kitniot, other things that you can also make flour with them, just in case. So Ashkenazi Jews accepted the decrees of the Gaonim, but the Sephardics didn't. Therefore, it is perfectly permissible for Sephardic Jews to eat kitniot on Pesach. That's why Sephardic people will eat rice, for example. It's a big dish for Pesach Seder, for Sephardim. Not for Ashkenazi, we don't eat it. Now, if you never had this kind of tradition, the idea is just go Sephardic. Go Sephardic. Or people who convert to Judaism, that they never follow any tradition before, go Sephardic. Because there is nothing wrong with the kitniot. It's not chametz. Back in the day, yeah, maybe they had a confusion. In these days, there is no way you can make a mistake. Everything is clearly labeled by law. So many conservative synagogues also, they discontinue the kitniot practice because at the end of the day, it doesn't make any sense. The only reason why a person like me, for example, I don't eat kitniot just to continue my family tradition. It's what I remember from my baba. She didn't eat it, so I feel bad starting to eat rice on my table. But it's totally fine if you decide to start eating kitniot. Any questions about this, the kitniot? Okay, really quickly now, Pesach, as I mentioned before, has different names. 2, I hope you remember, Chag Pesach, Chag Matzot. Right? Pesach, why? Is the feast of the Paschal Lamb. It refers to the lamb or goat which was designated as Passover sacrifice, Korban Pesach. It also means he passed over, in reference to God passing over the houses of the Hebrews during the final of the 10 plagues of Egypt. But we also have Chag HaMatzot, feast of the unleavened bread, because of our people left Egypt with such haste that there was no time to allow baked bread to rise. Okay? But 2 more names. Zman Cherutenu, the time of our freedom. This implies not only past freedom, but current freedom as well. Passover demands from us that we appreciate our freedom. And this is a big part of the Seder. And then we have Chag HaAviv, the spring festival, because Israelites left Egypt during the spring season. So we celebrate the spring as well. Now, how do we prepare our kitchen for Pesach? Oh, I hope you have lots of Tylenol or Advil there, because this is a headache year after year to prepare our kitchens. Why? Because of this. This is all the things you have to do in order to make your kitchen kosher for Passover. There are 4 different methods of koshering a kitchen and utensils for Pesach. Number 1, Hagalah, total immersion in boiling water. So basically, you get a big container with boiling water, and you get pots and pans, and you put it there. The boiling water, when you take them out, they're kosher for Passover. Okay? Number 2, Libun, purification by flame using a blowtorch until the surface is heated to a glow. Same effect is achieved by leaving the stove top on a maximum heat for 5 minutes and running the self-cleaning cycle of the oven. Okay? Number 3, Irui, and this is pouring boiling water over the surfaces using an already kosher for Passover pot. So this is something you will do, for example, for your sink. You can't just use a blowtorch in your sink. So you need boiling water, and after you clean it, you put boiling water all over the sink to finalize the koshering process. And then the last one, Milui veirui, soaking in cold water, which basically is very complicated. Nobody does that because it takes 2 days and you have to replace the water, and it's not worth it. And you will see why when you use one or the other. So the general principle of which method to choose is known as kevolo kachpolto. As it absorbs, so it sheds. So for example, a pot should be immersed in boiling water because that's what you use the pot for, right? While an oven rack should be kosher by fire, etc. So milui veirui is something that you will use for things that you use only for cold foods, but like a Tupperware. But because plastic is not kosher, you cannot kosher plastic, so you don't really use that last method. I've never seen anybody doing that. Just not worth it. The most famous one are the 3, Hagalah, Libun, and Irui. And of course, the easiest way is just to have things that they are kosher for Passover, period. That's what I have at home. Separate set of everything. So that makes it easier. Rocky, you said, why is it all this koshering necessary when one can purchase a perfect cleaner in a spray can or bottle? Because it's not about disinfecting the things. It's not about virus or bacteria. It's about chametz. It's a spiritual cleaning, and you cannot buy that on a store. That's the short answer, basically. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue. The next thing that you probably remember from the Seder, Mernazen, our method is to have separate kitchen in the basement, which is used for Passover. We take all Pesach meals down there. Good for you. I don't have that. Or for example, I was talking to my daughter, and she was saying that her husband's tradition, she married an Orthodox man. They sell their house, the entire house, and they go celebrate Pesach in Israel. They just book an hotel, and they stay there all Pesach, and then they come back, and they buy the house again, so they don't have to go through this cleaning at all. That's one way. Maybe everybody can do the same. I know with COVID, that they're not going this year, so it's the first time that you have to do the cleaning because of COVID. But in the future, you can think something like that. You can actually book. There are hotels in the United States, so you can take a Pesach cruise. Everything is taken care of. So you sell your house here in Winnipeg, and then you go to a resort or somewhere else that they will take care of you for Pesach. Shelly, around the dishwasher empty for Pesach. Yeah, there is a way in these days with the dishwasher that you have the sanitized cycle, if you have it, that is super, super high temperature. And I do the same thing because all my dishwasher, even the racks and everything is stainless steel. So in that case, you can kosher it. If it's plastic, you cannot. But there is a way that you can run the dishwasher empty before Pesach, that's correct, and then you can actually buy a second set of racks for the dishwasher. That's a solution that you use for Pesach. Okay, so let's talk about the Seder. Why do we need to have a Seder? Because it's another mitzvah. Well, actually the mitzvah is also from Exodus, that it says, on that day, Pesach, you are to tell your son, it is because of what Adonai did for me when I left Egypt. Okay? So, how do we say in Hebrew, you are to tell your son? Vehigadeta. Now, think about this word, vehigadeta. It sounds like what? Haggadah. Vehigadeta. And you should tell. That's why we have the Haggadah on Pesach, to fulfill the mitzvah of telling our children the story of the Exodus. That's it. That's what we do it. That's what we do it. But then because basically the Torah doesn't say how, the rabbis created the whole Haggadah. Just it's a collection of different traditions, but they all point at the same place, to retell the story of Exodus. That's why we need the Seder. So let me go back in time to the first written suggestion on how to do this. And this is going all the way back to the Mishnah. And the Mishnah says as follows. They pour the second cup for the Seder leader, and the child then questions his father. If the child is not knowledgeable, then his father teaches him. Why is this night different from all other nights? It's coming from here, from the Mishnah. On all other nights we eat both leaven as well as unleavened bread, but on this night we eat only unleavened bread. Question number 1. On all other nights we eat all kind of vegetables, but on this night we eat bitter herbs. Number 2. On all other nights we eat meat that is roasted, stewed, or cooked, but on this night we only eat roasted. Question number 3, but actually was dropped because we don't eat the meat of the Paschal sacrifice anymore, so it was replaced for the reclining. In all other nights we eat either reclining or not, and this night we all recline. That replaced that question, so we can keep the number 4. Because there were 4 original questions. And the 4th one is, on all other nights we dip once, but on this night we dip twice. Okay? So that's the same that we have in these days. It's because of the maror that we have dip. So the father must instruct his son according to the son's intelligence. So that's why we have the story of the 4 children in the Haggadah. He begins with shame and concludes with praise. That's why if you open the Haggadah, you will see that the first part of the Magid, the retelling of the story, is but saying that our ancestors used to worship idols. We start with shame. How shameful it is to realize that, we worship the one God and whatever. Yeah, not so fast. We used to worship idols before. And it's kind of harsh that we are reminded of that at the beginning of the Seder. But it's to fulfill the words of the Mishnah, that we have to start with shame, but we conclude with praise. And that's why we end singing to freedom and to redemption and all that stuff. It's all coming from the Mishnah. Okay? And basically many rabbis will say, we don't force a child to ask questions, but instead we perform acts that pique the child's curiosity. We may change the regular order of the meal, or hand out candies, or use other creative methods in the hope that the child will ask about their meaning and be prepared mentally and emotionally to hear the story of the Exodus. So basically, that means that's why the rabbis added also many other things in the Haggadah. All to try to connect with kids so they will learn the story of the Exodus in different ways. So what we have to understand here, what I'm saying, is the Haggadah that you buy on the store should be a guide, not a fixed formula. because it's not about going through the Haggadah beginning to end. It's about retelling the story of the Exodus in a meaningful way. I hope that is understood. It's very important. Because if you go through this whole Haggadah, the way it's written there, but the kids are sleeping or desperate to get their phone so we can play something else because they cannot tolerate that kind of Seder, then you are not fulfilling the mitzvah. So it's preferable for you to find ways to engage the kids, even if that means shorter Seder or to be more creative on the content that you present. Okay? So basically that's the way we prepare. So the Haggadah itself, and I will put it there, doesn't really matter to read it. That's the order of the Seder that you will find in any traditional Haggadah. The longest part is the one said Magid, relating the Exodus. That is the place where some families go crazy and they stay until 1 a.m. reading that part, because there is no end of how much you can add there. And all the other parts, if you remove the Magid, you have a 20-minute Seder. You have to have some kind of Magid because you have to retell the story. But you have to be creative. So you will have a meaningful one. Meaningful one. Okay? Yeah. Now, if you want to know how to conduct the Seder or what to do in the Seder or more details about the Seder, I will recommend you check our website and Facebook page, because Rina Sekter Elbaz, Dr. Rina, our Education and Engagement Director, she is going to be running a session on that. So if you want to study more about it, go visit our website and or our Facebook page, where you will have all the details. Hopefully you're going to register for that so you can learn more about specifically the Seder. Today, that's why I didn't want to touch too much about it, because that will be Rina's class. But I wanted to put you up to speed of everything right before the Seder, so you will be more prepared to study something like that. Okay? So do you have any questions before we say goodbye? And while you think of your questions, please remember to subscribe, hit the bell so you will be notified every time we go live or every time we upload something to our channels. Okay? And remember that we are going to be leading the first Seder from the Shari Zedek. So we can actually, or I can actually lead your Seder if you wish. And we can be having a virtual dinner together. And the second night it will be the same, but it will be not just Shari Zedek. We are going to combine forces with other synagogues. So we are going to bring back some kind of community-wide Seder, and I hope that I'm going to see you that time as well. So next week we have something very interesting, something very different. It's going to be a musical class where I'm going to present to you new melodies for Pesach. And it's going to be either because the melodies are new, or the way to present the melodies are new. John, there is no registration for the Seder because we are using this channel, right? We're going live on YouTube and Facebook. So you will have a chance. We are still exploring if we're going to be a Zoom component or not, because it's kind of crazy. The cacophony on Zoom is sometimes very distracting, but we're still analyzing that. But one way or another, you will always find me leading the service on YouTube and Facebook. Okay, the chat will be open so we can interact. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much, everybody. Remember, next Thursday at noon, the music of Passover. New tunes and some traditional tunes, but with a twist. That's the catch, with a twist. You know me, right? I'm going to bring something that it sounds traditional, but that is traditional, but it doesn't sound traditional. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.